Russia is now the junior partner in what's going on. China doesn't invest money out of the goodness of its heart. It will want something back from that. Xi Jinping's primary aim is to take over that #1 slot. I don't think Trump came away with anything in particular of substance. Well, the key development out of the summit between Xi Jinping and Vladimir Putin is the failure to have an agreement on the Siberia 2 gas pipeline going from Russia into China. Putin was going there to try and get this as a way of generating more income for the supply of natural gas into China. Xi Jinping needs access to more natural gas and is being hurt by what's going on with the closure of the Strait of Hormuz at the moment. But I think it's really quite significant that there has not been an agreement on that particular project in this summit. This summit came exactly a week after Donald Trump had been in China for a summit. It is Xi Jinping turning around and reinforcing the improved relationship that there is between Putin and Xi Jinping, or China and Russia. But I think looking at the dynamics of it, Xi Jinping was reinforcing that Russia is now the junior partner in what's going on. So I think it was a degree of control from China's side, and that's why we haven't had an agreement on something that Putin thought was quite significant and quite important. Xi knows that Putin's power is waning. He knows that without Chinese support, Russia would not be able to continue to prosecute its war with Ukraine. And Xi Jinping is also looking at the way that the Russian economy is going. He'll be concerned about the downturn in Russian production. He'll be concerned about the international sanctions that are going against Russia. He'll be concerned about the inflation and the longer term repercussions of that. And of course, China is investing a lot of money into Russia, enabling Russia to continue its illegal war with Ukraine. However, China doesn't invest money out of the goodness of its heart. It will want something back from that. And this is probably where Xi Jinping is holding back a little bit. This whole pipeline was going to be funded by the Chinese. There was going to be Chinese investment. It's clear that Xi Jinping doesn't want to do that because that investment has to be paid back somehow. And I don't think there's a clear path for that to come back. Interestingly, in the past few days, I've been speaking to some Chinese experts, and they say, looking forward into the future, the Chinese may even consider, if they don't get paid back in capital terms or other things that they can use, having to seek some form of territorial swap. And of course, China historically in the East has always had ambitions to get elements of China back that Russia stole at the end of the 18th, or at the end of the 19th, beginning of the 20th century. It's quite clear if we look at the Xi-Trump summit, the big thing there was Taiwan, and Trump went away within 24 hours and turned around and said that Taiwan should not go for independence. And I don't think Trump came away with anything in particular of substance from Xi. So again, that's Xi showing his strength. And there's rivalry between them. China, the #2 economy in the globe, United States, the #1 economy in the globe. Xi Jinping's primary aim is to take over that #1 slot, and he's putting everything he can into doing that. And then we get exactly a week later, and people say this, and the officials have said this is by accident. It's not by accident, it's by design, Putin going in. So I think Xi will be emboldened by what has happened with these two summits. And I think Trump, we've heard very little from him coming from this. And Putin, it's only just finishing. We haven't heard the final outputs from him yet, but I don't think we're going to hear very much indeed, apart from spin to say how good it is and how close they're working together. I don't think it's as close as people would like to make it out to be. Well, meanwhile, on the other side of the globe, we're back closer to Russia again. We have joint nuclear exercises going on between Belarus and Russia. So the joint exercises are there to send a message out internationally that Russia is still a nuclear power. Doing that at the same time when Putin is with Xi Jinping in China is sending that message to China, but it's also sending it out to the rest of the world. And saying that Russia isn't isolated here; it has got its ally Belarus as part of an international cooperation force. But also, given the pressures that there are on the Russian military and the numbers that they're having to put into the front line with the war in Ukraine, Russia doesn't have the same sort of size of forces that it needs to be able to support activities by its nuclear forces. So this will be training the Belarusian forces as to what they need to do to support any deployment of Russia's nuclear forces should they come out with warheads in Belarus territory. And it's all about sending a message. It's all about trying to practice working together. Not that they're very good at doing that sort of thing, but the messaging is something that I think people in the West are still sitting up and listening to. I don't think Xi Jinping will be taking it seriously. The alliance between Lukashenko and Putin has been strong. Belarus is a bit of a puppet state. We have to remember just before Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine just over 4 and a bit years ago, Lukashenko nearly got overthrown by a bit of a revolution in Belarus itself. He's not a popular leader, and it took the army to crack down. And that's significant because what Putin has wanted the whole way along is Belarus to open up another front in the attack in Ukraine, to split Ukrainian defences so that Russia can have greater effect. Lukashenko's never wanted to do that because he knows that if he sends his military into combat in Ukraine, they'll get tied down and they won't be in a position to protect him, protect his position. Now, I think he's got to a point where Putin realizes that and realizes it's much better to have Lukashenko not being overthrown and not another revolution in the one state that Russia is very close to and is running as a puppet state, and therefore hasn't really pressured him. We're getting a lot of talk at the moment of the Belarus forces gesturing and posturing to potentially go across and open up another front into Ukraine. I don't think it's any more than gesturing or posturing. That posturing means that Ukraine has to split its defences somehow and have a force there that's aimed at stopping Belarus forces if they come in, but they don't really have the combat power or the strength to do it. And again, the old threat to Lukashenko and Lukashenko's stability remains if they do anything. So there's a lot of posturing going on. There's a lot of gesturing going on. Putin likes having his puppet state, which is Belarus. He likes having his puppet leader, which is Lukashenko. And we saw that in the 9th of May parades in Moscow. The only really significant leader that was sitting beside Vladimir Putin was Lukashenko of Belarus. We see Russia going through cycles, and the cycles of activity always include at some stage a bit of nuclear saber rattling. It tends to be whenever they are on the back foot. It tends to be whenever they want to try and influence the West and Western decisions. We saw it whenever there was the decision to provide anti-tank missiles to the Ukrainians. Then it was the main battle tanks. Then it was F-16s. All of these came with nuclear threats coming out of Moscow. Once the red lines was crossed, did Moscow do anything about it? No. Western intelligence has monitoring Russia's nuclear forces as one of its number one intelligence priorities and has been watching very closely. And in the past 4.5 years, it has picked up no indicators to suggest that Russia has outloaded weapons with warheads, increased their readiness, or put them in a position where they're coming closer to firing. So a lot of the exercises, a lot of the saber rattling is merely just that, with the nuclear forces and with the weapons, maybe not with live warheads, driving around and doing what they do. But it's achieving the effect. It's achieving the effect by causing disruption in some Western governments who are nervous about what's going on, in delaying some of the decisions to support Ukraine. And we hadn't heard that for a while. So Ukraine is having a significant effect against Russian critical infrastructure at the moment by its explosively imposed sanctions against Russian oil and gas facilities and defence manufacturing. So it's about time for Russia to come out with the old nuclear saber rattling. It's a suggestion that they don't know what else to do.